Hey, thank you very much for coming out tonight to the conference. My name's Kevin. I'm going to talk to you tonight about Behavior Education Centers, otherwise known as BECs. You remember that one kid back in grade school, a kid that was so disruptive and defiant, you just couldn't believe it. You went home every day and told mom or dad about it. You remember he would sometimes bite teachers, injuring people, get in fights. He would yell and scream if he didn't get his way. Sometimes he yelled and screamed for no apparent reason whatsoever. Other kids tend to run out of the building, call them runners. They'll run out of the building and sometimes the police find them downtown or they'll be a mile or even 2 miles away from the building before they're found. These are the kids we're talking about, the ones who say things that'll make a sailor blush. The ones that you had to go home and ask your parents what those words meant. The ones that sometimes even I have to look up on Google to find out what those things mean. That's who we're talking about. I noticed when I was in school that those kids tended to disappear during the middle of the school year, or maybe after summer vacation, they didn't come back. I thought maybe they moved away. What I've learned is that they most likely got placed at a behavior center. A behavior center is run by an intermediate school district, an ISD. Therefore, they serve all of the districts within their county. They have extremely small class sizes and a very high teacher-to-student ratio. Where I work, there are 3 teachers for every 10 students at a minimum. Classes are taught in very small groups of 1 to 3 students, and academic instruction is individually tailored for the students. Oftentimes these students are behind their peers by the time they get to a BEC. Behavior is enforced via a token economy, and behavior is defined specifically and reinforced constantly with repetition, so the students learn what good behavior is. And we also define what is poor behavior. Bad behavior will cost students points. However, they can earn good behavior or earn points with good behavior. They may buy things with their points. They may buy privileges or snacks or other items, erasers, things that they could use at school. All students start at a level 1 behavior plan when they arrive. They progress their way up through level 5. At level 1, students don't have any privileges at all. They have to stay within arm's reach of an adult. By the time they get to level 5, they've earned quite a few privileges, and they're able to roam freely in the hallways if they're going somewhere where they should be going. And they've also mainstreamed, we call it. And that's where they've introduced the student back into a general ed classroom for at least 1 to 2 hours. The students that attend a BEC are very complex creations. And unfortunately, they've oftentimes been formed by abuse, neglect, or before they're even born with fetal alcohol syndrome and drug abuse in utero. 92% of my middle school students come from broken homes where they don't have mom and dad living under the same roof. 33% of my students don't even live with a parent at all. They live in foster care or with a relative. Unfortunately, 75% of my students have been victims of sexual abuse, physical abuse, or neglect, or oftentimes all 3. It's well documented that children who've experienced abuse and neglect are more likely to have adverse outcomes throughout their entire lives. A publication entitled A Coordinated Response to Child Abuse and Neglect by Goldman, Solis, Wolcott, and Kennedy tells us that children who have suffered abuse gravitate towards adult criminal activity, abusive, violent behavior, juvenile delinquency, and aggression. Another book written by Gold, Woolen, Sullivan, and Lewis entitled Child Abuse and Neglect tells us that children who've experienced abuse are 9 times more likely to engage in criminal activity. 9 times. Is it cheaper to deal with the outcomes of the abuse as a society, or should we attempt to intervene and reprogram these kids? We need to figure this out. Is this something we want to spend money on? The CDC felt the same way. They conducted a study, the U.S. Triple P system trials, and they found that for every $47 of benefit to society, it only actually cost $1 of programming costs. That's a pretty good bang for the buck. Kids that are exposed to such lifestyles don't even know what good behavior is. Their behavior is normal to them. It's what they see at home. It's what they see from their peers and their siblings. In a BEC, the behavior takes precedence over the academics. Without appropriate behavior, these kids will never learn academics. That's why we teach the behavior first. By the time they get to the BEC, they're often far behind, and we have to do a tailored academic plan with them anyway. They've spent a lot of time in seclusion, out of school suspension, in school suspension, and they just don't keep up with their peers. Once appropriate behavior is established, however, these kids begin to thrive, and they catch up quickly. For many students, this is their first time being successful with school. Once a student begins to behave in an appropriate manner, they are slowly integrated back into their school system. Eventually, they graduate from the BEC. That is the goal of a behavior center, to move these kids back into mainstream society and their mainstream school. And we've talked about what a BEC is, who attends a BEC, and the primary goal of a behavior center. They've become an integral part of our public education process. It's not easy to earn your way into a BEC, and it's certainly not easy to earn your way out of one either. These centers have become a great resource for our society. Without these supports, many of these kids would just be destined to a life of crime, public assistance, and incarceration. I believe all children are capable of learning if given the right tools and placed in the right environment. Sometimes the greatest lessons that we learn in life can't be measured with a standardized test. Now, these are the types of lessons that are taught at behavior centers all across our country. Thank you very much for attending.